Hello and welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your old-time host, Evan Ginzburg. And after a couple of weeks off, Mike Leno and, of course, Buddy Sotelo. And Evan, would you like to introduce our special guest for tonight?
Absolutely. He is an actor, writer, producer, director, avid wrestling fan, a true Renaissance man, Mark Brombacher. How are you, Mark?
I'm wonderful. Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, that pretty much covers all of it. And you
Okay,
added
good
the
night.
Renaissance Man. So you added the Renaissance Man, which is, you know, I still have to live up to that one, but definitely a wrestling fan, though.
There you go.
So, what I'd like to do is Evan sent us your demo reel from IMDb, and I'd like to show that as a way for our fans to understand your many talents. And all three of us saw your demo reel, and we're really impressed with your acting abilities. So I think,
amazing.
you know,
Okay.
nothing
Not
says
just
something.
Demo reel, it's a sizzle reel.
Yeah, sizzle reel. There you go. It's probably our best way for seeing and understanding, you know, the level of skill that you bring to the program here. So I'm going to share that in 1 second here. And everyone see it there?
Yes, but I see a big.
Oh yeah, the box for.
There you go.
There we are. All right, let's get going here.
I'm at your dad's. I had to return something.
Why? And Dave, why is dinner not ready? The kids need to eat, then go to bed early. They've got school tomorrow.
I left a message. I tried to call you like 20 times. Oh, and thank you for leaving the car keys. I ended up having to take your dad's old truck, and he's really not happy that I'm the one driving it.
1986 will do that to you, considering there's poison in it.
Did I do something wrong?
No, everything is fine.
I mean, if this necklace isn't enough, I could.
Господи, допоможи.
I love it when you speak Russian.
And I don't think it would be a good idea for you to stay.
Fuck you.
You look really unhappy. Is everything all right?
Everything's actually okay. It's just I was caught up in this book I'm reading. It's just so engrossing.
I'm afraid you got a little too wrapped up in the words on the page that you forgot to smile.
The rockness was listing slightly to one side.
You feel that? There was a shoal out there that's not on any chart.
Sequence 3, zombie appetite test, ribs, failure.
You have a damn car that actually starts in the morning.
Don't be silly. I don't need those things.
Stop saying that. You deserve a guy who can get you those things. And lately, I'm just not that guy. Dude, I was exactly like you.
You already said that, and I don't believe you.
Look at me, I'm so important. Mr. Professional in his big old chair. I can't be around a smelly dog.
I don't want a dog.
You and me both.
There you go. Excellent, excellent. And Mark, I was introduced to your work by Sanjay Mohanta, who is a real supporter of the arts, and he's got his hand in a lot of things himself. And great guy. And he introduced me to the Bloody Baxters, and I was very impressed with that. It's a dark comedy, but it's also a horror film. Very, very impressive work there.
Yeah, that's I don't know. I was just sort of fascinated by that idea, and I sort of borrowed from ideas like you know, like about suburban life, but with a dark, seedy underbelly. And I play a character that's kind of like he really loves his family and he'll do anything for it. So like, including murder. So he's kind of like an evil version of Clark Griswold, and that's kind of how I played him too. Yeah. But yeah, I wrote that one and directed that one, and it was it's doing the festival circuit, just finishing up soon, and probably going to end up distributing that either for free on YouTube shortly, or I might end up putting it out on Amazon Prime. I'll just see how that goes. But yeah, thanks.
Well worth seeing.
Mark, I noticed that you have a little bit of an accent. Are you originally from the United States?
I'm Canadian, actually. So
bingo, your boots give you away.
Really?
Yes,
that's funny because we don't hear it. We don't hear the boots. And when Americans say a boot, it's like, no, we don't say a boot. We say about. And how does it sound? I don't know. I think I say it, but
I could tell there was a hint, and we also have a Canadian writer for our show who's on regularly. So I'm beginning to pick up on the Canadian accents. Where are you from in Canada?
Ontario. I'm in Toronto for the last 20 years, but grew up in Northern Ontario. But yeah, as an actor, they always try to tell us to avoid the Canadian accent and just and not get noticed for it, because that can prevent us from getting work in American shows. So
when you were acting, I couldn't tell a hint of it at all. It isn't until now that we're talking back and forth that it popped out, and I was like, oh, this guy must be from Canada.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know, because I'm just being casual right now, so I might drop an A here and there as well, so they might pop out from time to time. So
yeah, no, it shows a little bit, because it's interesting. We have a very strong Canadian connection with this show. We've interviewed a lot of Canadian wrestlers and personalities and writers. There's a lot of writers, including our erstwhile companion, Jonathan Schwartz, who's also in Toronto.
Oh, he's Toronto. Okay.
Amazing. Yeah, we'll have to get you two to go and
the major. I don't know if that's the headquarters for the Sun overall for all the provinces, but I tend to think it is, and that's one of the world's big newspaper chains.
Oh, the Sun. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's.
So tell us how you got started in professional wrestling, where your love for professional wrestling. Not that you're in wrestling, but
I was at a point.
Okay.
I mean, a long time ago. But I mean, it started 1985. I was just a little. I was in grade 4 or 5, and a buddy introduced me to pro wrestling, and I saw Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo versus this upstart dream team of Brutus Beefcake and Greg the Hammer Valentine. And then Johnny Valiant ended up doing just cheating, and they ended up winning the belts that night. And I was so outraged about it. And I was like, how is that possible? Like, the referee clearly saw it, and we have instant replay. Can't we go back? And I was hooked. And and it took me a while to realize that, this is entertainment. And my dad sort of spoiled it for me later, but even after I learned that it was entertainment, I was absolutely hooked with the storytelling, the broad characters, and I was a fan ever since. And then in my mid to late 20s, I started promoting an indie wrestling fed in Toronto, and I worked with Ricky Soulman Johnson, who remains a good friend to this day. Oh. And so and a lot of people who were that came. I only did it for about 2.5 years. I think we did about 7 shows, but we had some good names come through there, like Sin Bodhi and Bobby Roode. I remember one of his very first shows was working for us, and paid him very little as you make on the indies, because it's all about the love, right? So, but it's it's just all of us putting a show together, a lot of young people, and renting a ring, getting a venue, and just trying to fill up the seats. But I love the business. Would love to get involved in it someday again, but I'm pretty content right now as a fan too. So
Ricky Johnson.
Go ahead.
Ricky Johnson is in our movie 350 Days, and he's a great guy. He just had major surgery, and we wish him well. Good guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he had some work done on his arm, so all the best to Ricky. And he's got an amazing story too. Like a lot of, and it was covered in Sports Illustrated, where a lot of Ricky's brother, who was Rocky Johnson, a lot of his estranged children that Rocky never acknowledged, Ricky stepped up and became the patriarch. And now all of these siblings of Dwayne the Rock Johnson have sort of come together, and Ricky sort of stepped up to be sort of the leader of the family. And now there's all these siblings who in the last 5-6 years have become a close family. And yeah, it's an amazing. I don't know if you've heard any of this story.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
But Rocky's not acknowledged it. I shot Rocky back in the 70s when he was teaming with, his father-in-law. It wasn't even his father-in-law then, Peter Mavia. All of that stuff that you're aware of. But Dwayne himself has, to my knowledge, hasn't acknowledged these folks. Maybe he has privately. What do you know is going on there? And I don't think, because I've known Dwayne's mom, Ada, for decades and decades. That must have really hurt her. A lot of us really didn't have any. I mean, we knew Rocky might have been fooling around, but we didn't know there was a lot of children as the end result.
Yeah. So from my understanding, it's touched. I actually made a short documentary film that's, I think it's still on Amazon Prime as well, called Soul Man, which is like 15 minutes, but it's about focuses on Ricky, but it also touches upon this, and some of the siblings are featured in it. Dwayne doesn't I think he knows that it's legit because it's hard not to, but he doesn't really acknowledge. He doesn't. There's no relationship there, and it's it's a sore point. But I also of the siblings that I've spoken to, that I'm still in touch with, they're very independent people. They've got great careers. They're wonderful people. They're not looking for money. They would like a relationship with their brother Dwayne, but they don't have to because they've got each other right now. And it's like, okay, well, if he doesn't want us, we would love a relationship with him, but so I don't really sense any bitterness there. It's not, they're not looking for, they're not looking for a meal ticket. They're all doing great, and they've all found each other. So
where are they located? They spread through Tennessee, Florida, places that Rocky was, or do you know where they're
almost entirely in Canada, the ones that
really?
I know about. Yeah.
But
I mean, there could be more in the States, but I mean, as far as these people, there's so.
But it's weird because Rocky didn't have all that much history. I mean, he'd bop in and out, but I don't think he stayed. It wasn't like California, San Francisco, Los Angeles, or obviously Florida or Tennessee, places that Rocky worked, at length when he was wrestling. And,
I mean, his background, he was he's from Amherst, Nova Scotia, born and raised there, and then he lived in Toronto. So, and I think, but yeah, so he might, there might be a larger story in the States as far as I know, but these are Canadian siblings. So, and I think the majority of them are older than Dwayne. So this would have all could have happened before, Ada and everything else. So I don't know if I should speak too much about this. I'm just trying to keep it to what was already reported. I don't want to spill any additional tea on this, but because it's a sensitive family matter. But yeah, it's very. But I mean, yeah, like definitely the main takeaway is that Ricky's a great guy, and he's stepped up, and really, he was really there for that, and they become a really strong family as a result. So.
And what are your ongoing projects?
Well, I'm working on I'm doing a lot of freelance writing right now. So in the past 4 years, I consider myself an actor first, but I wanted to create roles for myself, so I started writing, and my writing started catching on actually more than my acting. So like people said, hey, you actually know how to tell a story. So I ended up writing a bunch of projects that I would self-fund or find money to do. Like Bloody Baxter was one. I did another one called The Paperboy, which won a bunch of awards. They're all short films. Because of COVID, money is tight, especially in entertainment. So I've been almost entirely just doing paid writing gigs. I finished writing a TV pilot for a group of people. I was recommended to them. So like a 60-page TV pilot that looks like it's going to get produced. So I'm very excited about that. It's gonna. I can't really give the name of it yet, but there's a lot of action in it. It's a bunch of stunt performers and like really brutal combat. They just do really amazing work. So I'm really excited about that project coming up next. And yeah, I'm writing a lot of web shorts right now, and I have an idea for a feature. I've gotten 5 features written, but as I don't know, in the film business, it's hard to get people to put money into a feature. It's really hard to, and I'm exploring all options, but I have a new idea for a feature that I think, could potentially find funding. So I'm just keeping churning out work and paying the bills and that type of thing. So
what are the advantages and disadvantages of being in the Canadian film industry as opposed to LA or New York? Or
well, everyone tells me, especially as an actor, to get down to LA as quickly as possible, because there's a lot of film that's shot in Canada for tax credit reasons, but what ends up happening is all of the good roles go to Americans because they have a little bit more of a name, but we have great talent up here. But so if they have a movie that has like 50 roles available, they'll give all of the roles to established actors that are cast in Los Angeles or New York or wherever. And then, but for tax credit purposes, they have to give a certain number of speaking roles to Canadians, but they're usually 1 or 2 lines. So what you end up having here is, 75 actors competing for one role that might have 1 or 2 lines, and you end up getting it. And quite often, those roles get on the cutting room floor. So it's kind of a bit of a joke, but we're thrilled to get those roles. But there is also a lot of Canadian-made productions as well, and television. But it's a grind. Like anyone who's, anyone that, I'm a union actor. I've been doing this, for 8 years. They'll tell you the same thing. It's just a grind. You really have to love it, and you kind of have to love the punishment of being an actor. But I don't know. I just, I love doing it, and I love telling stories. That's, writing is kind of my avenue into doing it, because I can write stuff, and I can parlay that into me getting a role in something that I write, once it's produced. So that's kind of my strategy.
Mark, let me ask, is the SAG, Screen Actors Guild, is it any different or no different between the U.S. and Canada, for example?
We have ACTRA, which is our main union, and my understanding is the big difference here is that once you're in the Canadian union, you can't do non-union productions. So that's a real. So when I joined the union, the amount of work, when I was non-union, I was working 3-4 times a month on some kind of paying gig, and when I became union, in the first 3 years, you might work 2-3 times in a year. And that's typical. So it's like it's just really slow. It's just you get a higher caliber of auditions for bigger productions, but it's just it's not very glamorous, I'll say. But it's we're very proud of the work that we do. It's hard to explain to people who aren't in the industry, that they might see me occasionally on TV in a commercial or in a TV show, but how little working actors actually work in Canada. So we have to have other gigs and other irons in the fire at all time. So
this one other quick one. Enjoyed your sizzle reel. Looked like all totally different characters in there, but when you write, produce, direct, act, all in, say, your own feature, how difficult or stressful or non-stressful is that, because you're wearing lots of hats?
It's stressful. I've only done it twice. I did it for Bloody Baxters, and I did it for another 5-minute short that I did, but otherwise I wouldn't recommend it, and I'm probably not going to do it anytime soon. But for Bloody Baxters, this was sort of a brainchild, and I really wanted it done a certain way, and I really and I had to play the lead. I wrote the lead specifically for myself, but it's possible. But like if maybe if you have a huge multi-million-dollar budget and you've got you have lots of people operating the camera, then and you have a lot of support, then it kind of makes sense. But for that one, we did on a very small budget, and I was wearing way too many hats. But I'm happy with the project, and we had a really great team. But yeah.
Well, seeing now that a lot of mainstream movies are horror and doing quite well, like Smile, for example, Barbarian, does it inspire you to try to expand on a project like Bloody Baxter's because it's quality work, and I think it's superior to a lot of the horror that I've actually seen in theaters. Honestly.
Wow, thank you. I mean, that's the dream of this. When I originally wrote it as a feature, like I mentioned, I wrote 5 features. One of them was Bloody Baxter's, that concept as a 100-page, 90-minute feature, and I called it Bad Dad, like instead of Bloody Baxter's. But and it was, and it really got close to getting produced. It almost got arts funding to shoot in Northern Ontario, which means I would have been able to shoot it on an $800,000 budget. We would have got government grants for it, and it got canceled. It looked like it was about to get the funding, and then COVID happened, and then they just shut down all the grant money. And by the time COVID was over, I applied again, and then as it happens, once the big players like Hollywood finds out about a grant program that they haven't discovered yet that are originally designed for smaller artists, this movie Resident Evil, that came out 2 years ago, was shot in Northern Ontario, and they went in there and they just said, okay, well, they just basically did a pitch, said we're going to bring all of this talent up to Northern Ontario, and they pretty much got all of the arts funding from that one thing. So it's like it's less work for the bureaucrats to do, because the bureaucrats could go through about 50 pitches of all these smaller artists like they're supposed to, but these guys fly in and say, oh, we're going to bring in $5 million, and then you guys give us the other $5 million, and then they do less paperwork, and then everyone gets to look like a hero. But that's kind of against the spirit of what arts funding is supposed to be, right?
Until they actually see Resident Evil, and then I think we all wish we had gotten the money over to Bloody Baxter's instead.
Yeah. So I think it was that one there, but yeah, I hope I'm not making any.
I think you're right about it. I remember Resident Evil being shot up in Canada, and
yeah, it was the one. Welcome to Raccoon City was that one.
Yeah,
there was the Netflix series, which was also unwatchable. And then I'm a big fan of Resident Evil games and stuff, but yeah, it was it is what it is. But yeah, it was sort of heartbreaking. I mean, I would love the opportunity to make Bloody Baxter's. I was even thinking of making it as a serial, I did that one, and then as a 20-minute one, and said, well, I could just keep telling the story, do 4 episodics until we got enough for a feature. But that could be a grind too. But yeah, I would love the opportunity to develop that one more. Absolutely. And because I have a written feature script as well, with a different ending, and a lot more blood in the Bloody Baxters. So
tough business.
So Mark, if I had to describe you from your demo reel, and I haven't seen everything you've done, you seem like a more dramatic Chris Elliott. You're sort of like Chris Elliott with the sarcasm, but you take it to a more dramatic and darker level. So I think that's kind of a
Chris Elliott. The one he was the Get a Life guy, and he was also in Raymond. Is that the one?
No,
it's Saturday Night Live. He died young.
David Letterman. No, Chris Elliott. He's still around.
He's still alive.
Who am I thinking of?
You're thinking of
Chris Farley. I'm thinking of Chris Farley.
Yes, yeah, no. But what I really did want to ask you about, I did want to ask you about Kids and Zombies. Of all the ones that you had on your demo reel, what happened to that? And that looks like, of all the films, to me, the one that I wanted to see the most. So tell me about Kids and Zombies.
That was actually the first, on-camera footage I ever got for my reel. It was a pilot that never got made, but it was a fun day of shooting, and I legit didn't know it was my first time on camera. They fed me the lines, and I was like really, really nervous. But it was a kids show. It was like, and there was zombies were generally harmless, and kids were the only people that had the power to stop them, and. But it was a pilot, a TV pilot that never got made.
That sounds like a great idea, actually. That's probably better. That would have been a better movie than the Welcome to Raccoon City that wound up getting made.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
I was really hoping that got picked up. So, but
let's go back to wrestling. And when you were running your indie fed, were you mostly like a booker or a promoter? What was your role?
I would say. Mostly the booker, the money, Mark. I was the one with the job, and I was willing to put my money behind it. And I knew another guy who was around the wrestling business who had all the connections and introduced me to everyone. But I had still a pretty low paying job, but I could scrounge up, a few $1,000s at the time to put on a show and get a venue and put my own money up and try and recoup it. But yeah, my dream was always, ever since I was a kid, was to be, a booker, to be a storyteller. Cause I was never a super athlete. I don't want to take a bump. I did take a bump at one time and I regret it, but
yeah. Tell us about that story.
Well, it was, so I had, it was a match with, Bloody Bill Scullion was in the ring and Sin Bodhi, and I was giving an interview with them. And then it was at a steel cage for some reason. I was interviewing them, and it was before this match to crown a new CWA, Canadian Wrestling Alliance champion. And then I was giving him an interview, and then I said something, and I told him, I was like, yeah, after I say that, just punch me and I'll go down. And then he hits me, and then I take a dive, and then him and Sin Bodhi, I didn't know they were going to do this. They start just laying the boots to me, and it doesn't stop. I'm like, this is really scary. And I'm like, it's like, I didn't work this out. And then he puts me in a grapevine, twists my leg. And then I'm like, okay, I'm in a steel cage. I didn't work out what happens after this. I can't roll out of the ring. And true story, Ricky Soulman was in the audience, with my buddy Dave, and they were sitting there watching it. And, Dave was like, wow, that's pretty cool. How the hell's Mark going to get out of there? And then Ricky goes, I don't know. And then Dave says, maybe you better go get him. And it's like, oh, okay. And then he just does an impromptu run in, beats the crap out of them, and then pulls me out of the ring. So thanks again, Ricky. Thank you for saving my life that day, because it was pretty scary. But,
Wow. So did you actually make any money off of being a promoter, or was it always a sinkhole? Because it's something, talking about indie promotions is something that comes up on the show really often. I was involved in a lot of indie feds back in California, and Mike knows about a lot of indie feds too. So, and it was always kind of a sinkhole out here in California. I'm wondering if you were able to make any money in Canada doing it.
I'll say no. I mean, for the first show we did, we pretty much broke even, and we kind of made a bit of a name for ourselves because we actually had Ricky himself working that show the first time he'd worked in a long time, and we billed him as The Rock's uncle. And this was close to the time of WrestleMania 17, which was coming through Toronto at the time. So we just got a bit of a buzz, and we packed a nightclub, and we got a bit of a name for ourselves. And like the fact that we broke even, we thought we were all big shots. But then slowly after that, we did a bunch more shows. But we had 3 good shows, and then one bad show will just sink all of the money. So you break even 3 times. Then the third show made nothing. And so there's $2,000 out of your pocket, and you're like, ouch, I can't do that too many more times. So we ended up doing a few more shows after that. But I wanted to keep going. I felt we were getting traction, and we were even talking to some media guys, like, hey, we need to get you on TV. We need to get you or even do an internet show. We were talking to some people that could help us with that. But my partner decided he was sort of done. He didn't want to put money in it anymore. And that just sort of fizzled out after that. It's a lot of work, and it's grueling. It's hard to make money. I mean, but I did want to keep going at the time, but but it's
Let me ask something, and I'll throw to Evan. Have you had any rapport, or I'm sure you've met Scott D'Amore, who has the school, and now that Impact is owned by a Canadian consortium, the Fight Network folks, I forget what their new name is, Anthem. He's got that really famous school and promotion, and there's a lot of guys in Canada. You could look at Jacques Rougeau when he puts on those annual charity shows that draw 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, which is the biggest indie crowd of the year. Major stuff happening at all times in Canada. There was an all women's big promotion, sort of the Montreal equivalent of Shine or Shimmer, with lots and lots of top women wrestlers, Melissa Anderson, Canada has Lufisto, and she's got a new book coming out with ECW Press. So lots going on there. Are you keeping sort of in the thick of the indie scene, or what are you doing currently with wrestling up there?
Me, I'm aware of some of those names. Like, the last time I was actually involved in a show might have been 7 years ago as a ring announcer. Lufisto was there. I'm pretty good friends with Bloody Bill Scullion, and he's always talking about doing one last comeback match, and I was talking about doing a documentary about him a little bit more, which is sort of a follow-up to the Soul Man, because he was in that. But yeah, not a ton lately. It's sort of, I've been trying to sort of get my film career going, but I do have a desire to tell, some kind of, maybe in the world of film, maybe do another wrestling documentary, or possibly even tell a narrative story about a wrestler, kind of like the greatest movie of that kind ever, which is The Wrestler, that Evan, of course, knows about. But I had an idea of like even doing a stage play called Gorilla Position, and it would take place entirely in Gorilla at an indie show type of thing, and it was just sort of like a young promoter trying to make it in the business, and he's dealing with the people coming in and out of Gorilla, and then there's all sorts of drama that goes on back there. I thought that could be a fun idea for a stage play, or even a film, but as far as the indie scene, I'm kind of out of it, but I still know a few wrestlers, and I've been meaning to get out and watch some, because Santino Marella.
Yeah, he's got Battle Arts there.
Yeah, he's got Battle Arts, which is just in my neck of the woods. I've been meaning to go out and see some of their shows at some point, but yeah, I need to get out there more for sure.
Mark, I just got an idea. Why don't you do a one-man show with wrestling as a theme? And this is a real showcase for an actor to do a one-man theatrical show. I saw Andy Kaufman and Debbie Harry on Broadway do T-Neck Tansy some 40 years ago. So it's not that wrestling hasn't been presented in the theater. It is an option, and you could write a role for yourself. And a one-man or one-woman show is a real showcase for an actor. It really is.
Yeah. How about a documentary on Ricky Johnson, so the world kind of knows more about him?
Yeah, well, I did. I made a 15-minute documentary on him. Okay. That's on. Maybe I should send you guys a link to that actually, and see if I'm curious what you guys think. But yeah.
And Toronto. One last thing, and I shut up because you're Evan's guest.
Mike's picture's frozen.
Yes, it happens every once in a while.
Yeah. Well, I shot a couple of times at Maple Leaf Gardens. This was when it was still Tunny, like some Chic and Abby and Mighty stuff that predates you. But you said when you started watching, and the WrestleMania Hogan Ultimate Warrior was in Toronto, huge.
Oh, yeah.
Gate. Were you there? What was the press like for that thing?
Well, I was living in Northern Ontario for WrestleMania 6, but I did see I did see WrestleMania 17 in the Sky Dome in Toronto from the seats, but from a private box that I won at some bar contest, which was the greatest thing ever. So I got to yeah, so that was the only WrestleMania I ever got to see in person, but no, so the only wrestling I got to see as a kid in Northern Ontario was this amazing promotion called International Wrestling, which featured the Rougeaus, Dino Bravo, Rick Martel, some of the other like the Road Warriors came through, Bruiser Brody came through. So we had some amazing talent come to the hockey arena, and a lot of those guys end up going on to the Fed and onto bigger things. But that was absolutely fantastic.
One of the world's biggest wrestling territory wars out of Montreal. It was originally called La Lutte, the Rougeaus International Promotion, but they were competing against the Vachons Grand Prix. And it was like every wrestler on the planet was either in one group or the other. Chic was with the Rougeaus and Abby, it was like with the others, and Dick the Bruiser would come up. I mean, it was packed with pretty much everybody. Bruno Sammartino held the tag straps in Grand Prix for the Bechans with Carpentier, the Hollywood Blondes, the original ones there, managed by Sir Oliver Humperdinck. I mean, it was rocking. They had 2 outdoor stadium shows at Jerry Park, kind of. I think the second one was like a joint effort, but the first one was strictly Grand Prix. So major Canadian history there. But Maple Leaf Gardens, one of the greatest venues ever.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I never actually got to see a Maple Leaf Gardens show. I remember I was I was a kid. First time I'd ever been to Toronto. I was only a wrestling fan for about a year, and we ended up staying at the Carlton. This hotel called the Carlton Inn, which was right next to Maple Leaf Gardens. And then I went out there, and then I just saw there was like that they were having wrestling tickets. I remember asking, is like, I think they said Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan were wrestling that night. And I think it would have been like 1984, 85, even before WrestleMania. And I begged my dad to go, and he's like, my dad's just like, no, you're not enough of a wrestling fan. You just started watching it a month ago. So we're not going to this. But I just imagine what kind of show was that there that night. And, I'm still envying the memories I could have, the memories I missed out on that one. But,
So I'm always fascinated. First of all, have you seen the Tales of the Territories, the one about Stampede Wrestling?
Oh no, I haven't. Unfortunately, I've been watching a lot of the Dark Side of the Ring, but not the Tales of the Territories yet.
I think you should watch the one on Stampede, because I think you'd find it really fascinating. But we've had a lot of Canadian personalities here, and it always fascinates me that Canada, in the United States' view, has like the politest, laid back people in the world, according to us, how we view you guys. Yet Canadians make some of the most accomplished and vicious professional wrestlers in the world and in the history of the world. Why do you think there's that dichotomy between you being polite people and yet you make some of the meanest wrestlers?
Like any stereotype.
But either way, why do you think?
Well, I don't know. It's true. We are polite and we say sorry all the time, and we pronounce it sorry instead of sorry, but it's interesting. And I always tell this to people: polite doesn't mean kind. It's like polite is like, we can be polite, which means we say nice things, but we're not actually, we don't actually think them. So we can be real jackasses, behind the politeness. But it's true, like Canadian, we have crazy wrestling fans here. We just absolutely love wrestling. Almost as much as hockey. And like even today, look, we in Montreal, the Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens are carrying the Fed. Could you imagine the Fed right now if it didn't have those 2 Montreal hosers out there? I don't know. I just couldn't imagine people tuning in if they didn't have Sami Zayn, to watch as part of the bloodline, and Kevin Owens too. So I don't know. It's amazing how much, and then you look at Chris Jericho, his contributions, the Hart family, Edge, Christian, it's incredible. I mean, that's just the stuff in my generation too.
You're Trish Stratus too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Possibly the GOAT.
Out of Ron Hutchison's school with Sweet Daddy Siki.
Oh yeah, I met Sweet Daddy Siki, and he was we got footage of him in the documentary that I did, but the director didn't include it, which I disagreed with. There's some great conversations we had with Sweet Daddy Siki, but I know he's featured prominently, I think, in 350 Days, isn't he? Or Sweet Daddy Siki.
Ricky Johnson's in it.
Ricky is, okay. Oh, someone else did a documentary on Sweet Daddy Siki.
I think Siki is one of those Jackie Robinsons of wrestling. There's, Luther Lindsay and Bobo and Bearcat Wright and Dory Dixon, but Siki was in that too. One of those guys that had to go through a ton of racism in the 50s, early 60s when he was a babyface. So when you see him now, does he still have the bleached hair, which he didn't have back in the 50s? Does he have the whole gimmick going on?
Sure does. And he runs karaoke in Toronto to this day. So like that just sort of, that keeps him young, keeps him entertaining. So he does karaoke shows at various bars across the city. And if you're ever in Toronto, maybe look that up because that's quite an experience. So.
Doesn't he have his own band though? He's a great singer. He can really sing and play. I thought he had a band as opposed to straight out karaoke.
As far as I know, it's just karaoke that he runs. Like at least for the past few years that I've known about it. So I didn't know he had a band before, but yeah, he is quite a singer, absolutely. But that's quite a story. He's got quite the life story as well. Yeah.
There's a guy should do a book or a docu too. There's another entertaining guy. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they did a full-length documentary on Sweet Daddy Siki. It's been done.
Oh,
yeah.
Let's be out of that loop.
Okay.
So I might have heard this from Ricky or some of the boys, and it's hard to tell when they're ribbing me, but they're telling me that Sweet Daddy Siki, back in the day when he wrestled in the South, he couldn't go to a restaurant and get anything to eat, so he brought like a shotgun with him, and he would go hunt for rabbits and live off of that while he was there. So is that sounds like a rib to me? Is that a little, or is that true? That could be true.
Those guys, it was extreme racism depending on where Evan remembers too. Like Killer Kowalski had to sneak his opponent for the night, Bobo Brazil, into his hotel room, get him food because they wouldn't let him rent a room. They wouldn't let him eat in the restaurants. It was pretty horrific. Yeah, you know all that stuff.
Incredible.
Yeah. They had Jim Crow up until late 60s. Yeah.
Was that in Canada too? Did they have that ridiculous Jim Crow garbage up there in the?
No, they didn't. They made it. Like as far as I know, all the way through school, they would always teach us about Canadian history and said, oh, in the States they had that, but we didn't have it here. Of course, there's certainly racism in Canada. There's no doubt about that. But as far as the laws go, no, it was nothing like that.
So, Mark, if I were Hollywood and I came to you and said, here's $1 million to make a movie, what would
800,000.
800,000. No, we'll make it a cool million. What would you do with it? And what would be the first thing on your mind that you'd want to make a project for?
So I'd say I would go with horror, because horror movies, you get a great economy because you can sell it in any market. People where English isn't their first language, they can follow along the story, of a horror movie, and you don't need a star because the monster and the terror itself is the star. It would be a very character-based stuff. I mean, like, my story of Bloody Baxters, I like to write something that is primal, like, something that's about the family, it hits people in the heart, and something where horror is primal because it has to do with immediate danger, and just write characters that people care about. So I'd probably pitch them, like something like Bloody Baxters and that script. And I have another script too, which is about like a bunch of actors working a gig in a spooky mansion. This is something that happened to me, and it sort of gave me the idea. It's like, imagine we were hired to work this acting gig for all these rich millionaires in this spooky mansion in the middle of a forest, which is what happened to me. We were doing an acting gig and performing for them. What if things turned sideways and suddenly, the wealthy elites decided to play the deadliest game and hunt some actors or something like that? So to me, simple stories with immediate danger and real compelling characters with heart, and where they have relationships that has the highest stakes. I think I could tell a heck of a story with $1 million. And I would bring in one name to do a cameo, something like that, like maybe a horror icon, like someone like Danielle Harris, who I love.
Evan Ginzburg.
Absolutely, yeah. So, but yeah, I'd love to, I love the horror genre, and I'd love to, tell a quirky,
What in your opinion is the best horror movie that you've seen?
It's The Shining. I don't know. I just keep coming. I know it's cliche. Everyone loves Stanley Kubrick, but to me, it's the perfect movie. I also love The Exorcist, and I love Halloween, the original. Just trying to think of some of those. Yeah, those three. It's hard. Those are pretty cliche answers as well. But and Evil Dead, the first one, that was also done on a really tiny budget. Sam Raimi is just magnificent. So Yeah.
What about John Carpenter's Thing?
Oh, yeah. I saw, actually, I only watched it once when I was a kid, and I revisited the Thing again recently, and it's magnificent.
It
And
still
of
holds
course,
up.
they live.
Yes.
They live.
Yeah, the thing still holds up, even with all the CGI that we have today. The monster in the Thing still is, in John Carpenter's Thing, still is pretty darn scary. I watched it with my daughter, and it still get the part with the blood where they're testing the blood and the blood jumps out. It's that's still a good jump scare. 50 years later. So moving on to closer to 60 years. But no, it's interesting to hear where your thoughts are. Now, I wanted to know what you feel like the future for yourself and for Canadian wrestling is headed, in your thoughts.
For Canadian wrestling, I don't know. It's wrestling in general. What I see happening is I see the WWE being sold to some corporation, and I think what's going to happen is, regardless of what we think of the McMahon family, I like the fact that at least Triple H is one of the boys, and he's a worker, and he knows what the boys go through. Once that is out of the business, then the Fed, will, at least in AEW, the boys are still involved to a certain degree. But I think as far as big time wrestling goes, I think that the Fed will be sold and become to this point, I still think that there's a heart in the product, but I think it'll be completely soulless and really dull once corporations get their mitts on it and it just becomes a big marketing engine. And I think that'll probably lead to a bit of a renaissance in the indie world, which could mean maybe something wakes up in Canada again. Maybe there could, I'd love to see some sort of push closer to the territory days. I think there's so many great, promotions. Because I remember when WCW folded and it was just the Fed and there was no viable, very few viable indie Feds. And now we've got so many options. We've got Impact, Ring of Honor, and, so many different avenues. So I'm hoping that there's even more of that. It just, there's a lot of little pockets of indie wrestling and more places for talent to work on their craft and, make a living. So, yeah.
If the stars align, The Rock could buy WWE. He could hire Ricky, and Ricky could hire you, and you could be running WWE. That's, if the stars all aligned.
Yeah, well,
I doubt it.
They'd have to give me a pretty good offer. I'll field whatever offer. Yeah,
yeah,
that'd be wonderful. Yeah, I mean, it's.
Can you imagine?
You guys don't think a company like the latest money is not NBC Comcast, which would be the obvious choice to continue? They've been working, like Vince Senior, Jr. working with Dick Ebersol for Saturday Night's Main Event, all of the stuff with NBC all these years. But now it's on the Saudis. Don't you think they would want to keep like Triple H head of creative if this thing happened in the next year? Or
the Saudis probably, they're big fans, and I think Comcast would. I think Disney, no, I think Disney would probably try and go a different direction. They would want to, I don't know, maybe that's just the cynic in me, but it'd be, I think Triple H, he's still learning. Like, I think, but I think I feel comfortable having him run it because, he's been there. He's I think he's originally from like Quebec too. No, he is from Connecticut.
But the Boston area. He's from New England. Killer Kowalski, who was huge in Canada, trained him. But the product, would you agree the product has been pretty exciting? It's been much better since July when he took over for creative. He brought back and made on a huge scale those NXT stars. A lot of them are hitting home.
100%. Yeah, it's just, and I was skeptical when he took over. I said, okay, there's going to be this big explosion of him doing his own thing, and then they're going to realize. But no, actually, he's been doing really well. I'm really happy to say that. So I hope he gets to continue doing what he's doing because I don't know. I get a feeling that if Vince had things his way, he would refire all the people that Triple H rehired. So,
Evan, better let Evan finish up with you.
Yeah, anything you'd like to plug, Mark, before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I got one thing you can check out. Something I've been working on. I've been writing a lot of web shorts for a site on. It exists only on Facebook, but there are a lot of short sort of morality stories that I've been writing, and some of them have gone viral. Like 3, 4, 5 million views, which is pretty significant on Facebook. So it's called Reed Framed, like Facebook/Reed Framed, REID, like the name Reed, and Framed. If you want to check that out, there's about 17 short films that are that I've worked very hard to bring to life. They're all very low budget, and it's sort of like very emotional, kind of simple stories of people who have have to have a moral dilemma. Will they do the right thing, or that type of thing? But it gets people engaged and gets people talking. So that's I'll plug that for now. And you can check me out on Instagram if you want. Brombacher, like it's my last name, but with actor on it. BROMBACTOR on Instagram, and follow me there. And thanks so much for the support. Really appreciate getting to hang out and talk wrestling with you guys. So.
Will you make sure you send Ev the Ricky Thompson documentary? I really want to see that.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll send that right away to Evan, and you guys can. I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. So
there you go. And I'd just like to do a quick plug. 20 years ago, 2002, we did a little documentary in 3 weeks, shot on pennies, called Wrestling Then and Now. Killer Kowalski, Nikolai Volkov, Don Dr. Death Arnold, Tiger Khan, who worked for the Hearts in Calgary. A lot of late friends in there. So I'm pleased this could be that the director, Dwayne Walker, just got it on Tubi, so it opens up, to a whole different audience. And
wow.
A lot of late friends in there, so it means a lot to me. And Wrestling Then and Now, check it out. And Mark, it's a tough business, the the film, TV business. It's funny, as a New Yorker, many times I'll watch a TV show and they say it's New York, but it's Canada. And I just take one look, I go, that's not New York.
They do that with San Francisco a lot too now these days as well.
Yeah.
So,
but it's not an easy business, and
it's a tough grind. I left a 6-figure career in advertising, and I talked to my wife, said, hey, I've been doing this. I want to try acting because it's something I wanted to do for the longest time. And my lovely wife said, go for it. And but it was a big, huge pay cut, absolutely. But no regrets. So it's a journey. So. But
here's the other side of it. You could fall into some ensemble show like The Walking Dead, and next thing you know, you're making 5 figures an episode. I mean, you could there's a lot of
residuals for the rest of your life as long as it keeps running.
I mean, sometimes you're just in the right place at the right time also. So you got to be in it to win it. Once you pull the plug and you go back to a 9 to 5 or whatnot, you're out of the game. So. Things. It's a weird business. It's a very strange business, but a lot of highs and lows, man. I know a lot of actors who are starving, and a lot of actors, just the pinnacle. I mean, we worked with Mickey Rourke when he was nominated for an Oscar, and he won the Golden Globe on The Wrestlers. So, and his career had ups and downs too. So, I was once talking to him. And I actually said to him, what did you think of The Wrestler? And he goes, I can't watch it. It reminds me of my life. Because I can't watch it. So, it is a brutal business.
Yes.
But anyway, Mark, I really do respect your work and what I've seen of it. And thanks so much for doing the show. And, please keep in touch. And when you have something else to promote, come back on.
Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And I'll absolutely keep you guys posted on what's coming up next.
Okay. Oh, and while we have a minute, let's also remember the Flying Greek.
Oh, we
show.
love Mike Papa. Evan brought him to the show, what, 5 months ago?
Yeah, R.I.P. Mike Pappas, the Flying Greek. I loved him as a kid. One of the first wrestlers I ever saw on TV, WWF. He was a little guy in a world of giants. Vince's dad always booked these super heavyweights to wrestle Bruno and Pedro and Backlund. And there was Mike Pappas, 5'6" or 7", battling these guys. And he was like the Rey Mysterio of his day. And yeah, I did a nice piece on him for Pro Wrestling Stories.com. I'm the senior editor over there. And, we're glad we had the opportunity to bring him on this show and to do that piece on him. Nice guy, 82 years old, died of cancer New Year's Eve. Eve. And I also, while we're on that subject, Buddy will tell you, we've done over 200 episodes of this show, and basically
about 150. We're almost at 150.
150. Okay, so pretty much every episode we're announcing somebody dying. But Paul Ween from Ring Fever, early podcast, he died this week also. Good guy, very supportive. So R.I.P. Mike Pappas and Paul Ween. We dedicate the show to these guys, and I knew both of them. So 2023 is turning into a shit year already.
Well, we always have our ups and downs, and sometimes the downs overshadow the ups in wrestling. I would hope, Mark, you could get a chance to see Tales of the Territories, and check out what that's all about. I think you'd really enjoy it. In the meantime,
because I'm working with Canada's Vice, Sherry Martel, Chris Candido, and Tammy. Those are amongst the upcoming.
Are you supposed to publicly announce this?
I can announce that it's upcoming. It's going to be the next season of Dark Side, though.
Oh, wow.
And I told them,
Sherry Martel one will be
Tammy make a full episode on her alone. You're just including her with Chris. That could be a 2-hour instead of a 1 hour, though. Simply.
Absolutely.
I was once at an indie show, and Sabu and Chris Candido were wrestling each other. They were like kids back then. In a New Jersey indie, they were like the opening match, and there was Tammy. Sitting there, you had no idea the heights that these people were going to reach and the depths that these people were going to reach. Speaking of tough businesses, oh my!
Oh yeah,
these guys been to hell and back. Oh man, so yeah.
But we do wish you a very prosperous and healthy, of course, 2023 to you, Mark. And when you have another project that's coming up or whatever, we'd love to have you back on the show.
Well, thanks so much, guys, and I'll see you guys down the road. Cheers.
All right. Good night, everybody.